Hello, and welcome to episode 64 of the Star Bros podcast. Whoever thought we'd get this far?
I think you say that every episode.
I do. I'm joined by my bro host, Ben Skywalker,
I'm joined by my bro host, Jan Solo.
and I'm at your place for the first time in a while.
Welcome for those that are joining us on YouTube to what is it, Star Bros Studio West? Is
Yes.
that what we decided to name it?
That's what we're calling it.
Okay. Also known as Ben's house.
Yes. Lovely to be here on Friday the 13th.
I know. Very spoopy.
Very spoopy.
I think Susan used that word
Yeah.
earlier this week.
Cool.
I can't remember why. Oh, because she was watching Wednesday.
It's a spoopy show.
I haven't seen the show. Have you?
I've seen it. I loved it.
You did?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm the one that's missing out.
One of my favorite shows of all of last year.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Maybe I should give this a shot.
this is not a Wednesday podcast, but I heard that they're going to do a season 2.
I've heard that too. Cool.
Yeah.
I should probably watch season 1.
Check it out.
I'm not much of a scary person, like a scary show, but
No.
I heard it's just got a little bit of like scary vibes, but not like, it's not horror. It's not like
It's not
trying to scare you. So yeah.
I'm not into that at all. I'm not
Yeah.
into horror.
Yeah.
If you're into that, that's cool. Kevin Scott loves horror.
Yeah.
And he's one of our favorite comic book writers / writers in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally cool if that's your thing. Not our thing.
Not ours, but
it happens to be Friday the 13th.
yeah.
On a dark, cold night here in Starbro Studio West.
Yep. And I wish that I really wish we might have to figure out how to arrange the room, because I feel like I've got this whole like Star Wars setup in this room, but it's all on that wall. So like our viewers are getting the other sides of me right now, which is I like to play the ukulele and I like hockey. Well, I guess you can't see it really in the picture over there, but most of like the Star Wars stuff is over there or against that wall. So we might have to figure out a way to make it really cool for viewers to see just how nerdy I can be.
We're working on it. We're only 64 episodes in, so we're still kind of getting our feet under us. We're getting the hang of things.
We're at 2.5 years. We're gonna be at 3 years doing this.
I know.
In just a matter of months.
In a matter of months. And right before we hit the 3 year, I think this is particularly exciting. We're going to have the Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary to celebrate.
I know. There's so much to look forward to. Mandalorian season 3.
Yes.
Yes, you just mentioned the Return of the Jedi. There's just a lot. And then Ahsoka eventually. It's going to be a great 2023. And guess what? I think we can finally say the pandemic's over. I heard that like a really high up person in U.S. government is leaving his post because he's like the pandemic's over. So it's like, is that the official news?
It's funny you say that because Philadelphia public schools just went back to masks.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh! So it's not over.
Well, I don't know.
Oh my gosh! I don't know.
I'm not an expert.
I don't want to hear. Knock on wood. This is wood. I can knock on that.
Yeah. But it feels way different than 2020, 2021 when we first started. And this was like one of the only times that we would leave the house was when we were recording a podcast.
It was for the longest time. It was what got us a little bit of like normalcy in life.
Just a taste of it. Yep.
But here we are 3 years later, still doing this thing.
Spoiled. I leave the house all the time now.
I know it's terrible, and I get sick all the time now because of it.
It would be fun to do it with somebody else.
How have you been in the last 2 weeks since I've seen you?
Oh, pretty good, man. Pretty good, man. My dad's in town.
Yeah, that's fun.
And I brought over some candy. My dad is visiting from the old country, Poland, and we had some delicious Polish candy before we start tonight, which means
for the first time for me.
Yeah, cool. Which means we'll have a terrific sugar crash at some point.
You're going to be yawning by about the 30-minute mark.
Yes. So if the episode starts to drag a little bit, that kind of explains it.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that he's visiting. Hopefully, you're having a good time. Thank you for taking some time out to come and talk Star Wars with me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Should we start talking Star Wars?
Let's do that.
Yeah. How do we? I should know how we start this thing, right? That look of just like, you're dumb. Don't act dumb. Yeah, we start that with our first segment, news from across the galaxy.
Ooh,
I had to get on out of
was there 2 people that fell?
No, I think that was just never mind. I just thought of something a little bit
fair enough.
Gross. I
carry on.
Say splat. News. What do we got in news this week? We got Bad Batch.
We're now 3 episodes into Bad Batch. I'm glad that they did the 2 episodes at once that release week. That seems to be a theme.
What's
doesn't it?
that?
Where,
When you
where
release a new something, you drop 2 episodes?
yeah.
Or in the case of Andor, didn't they drop 3?
I don't remember. It's funny how soon you forget. They dropped multiple. I think it was
I
3.
think it was.
And then
It is funny how
Obi-Wan,
soon you forget, yeah.
yeah. Obi-Wan, they did a couple.
Yep, yeah, that's right.
Maybe Mando, they'll do a couple.
I don't know, because that's not one that, like, has to be promoted, you know? Like, it
No,
promotes itself by now.
by now, I think you're right. But
I
I'll
mean, I'll wish for that.
yeah, I'll
Be
I'll
nice.
take a double dose of whatever show you're giving me.
But
So,
even then, like, this one was supposed to kinda come in doses or in at least a duo because the first episode was called Spoils of War,
mhm,
and then it was followed up with the second episode, Ruins of War,
mhm.
which was a before watching and clicking play, I looked at both of those titles. I'm like, okay, so the first one's gonna, really, everything's gonna go really well for the Bad Batch, and the next one's gonna juxtapose that. But it ended up kind of just bleeding together into the same episode, and
It
it was shown like basically a mission gone awry,
yeah,
right?
it did feel like an hour-long episode
Yeah,
that just happened to be broken up into 2 pieces, but,
yeah,
I enjoyed it.
yep.
It was kinda cool if I remember hearing, "Oh, well, Omega's gonna be older," and then, like, is she gonna be a grown-up, whatever, but she's still a little kid.
She just had a different hairdo.
It's different hairdo. So they're still the dad batch.
Mhm.
They're still kind of raising Omega. I like the heisty angle.
Yes.
That seems to always be a hit in
Yeah.
Star Wars, whether it's Solo or whatever else, or the recent season of Andor. They're getting good at telling these heist stories.
Yes. I just got this feeling throughout it where it just felt like we just started off where we ended the last, like, there was nothing too, like, in your face abrupt different about it. It was like, we're just gonna do another heist.
Yeah,
We're just gonna do another mission. That's
yeah,
it. And that it felt a little off at first, but I kind of liked it too because I don't know. It's like every new season has to make a really big deal, a really big splash at the beginning to get you hooked. And I was like, no, we're gonna keep doing the missions. Now there are a few things that were different. This was a very big mission, one that if they pulled it off, they would have been able to enjoy a nice retirement
hmm
and just lay back and relax a little bit. And we learned by the second episode it didn't go too well. That they were unable to fulfill the mission. We still haven't seen the aftermath of that
hmm
too,
hmm
but it was. I guess a little bit different in that sense, and then it packed a nice surprise of taking us back to Sereno and showing us Count Dooku's lair, which a
Yeah,
lot of people were excited about.
yeah, that was pretty cool. So two thoughts about that. It's interesting how much play Count Dooku is getting recently
Yeah,
with Tales of the Jedi.
yeah.
He's not necessarily featured in this, but his story is. And the other thing that jumps out at me from all this is just kind of how bittersweet and sad it is
How so?
that they have to kind of keep heisting. And at first it was
Oh,
like we kind of have to pay our bills and pay off our debt and
yeah. They had nowhere better to go, nothing to do, no cent to their name,
yeah.
no credit to their name, I should say.
And now the story is kind of shifting to like, look, the clock's ticking.
Yeah.
You got to find a way to be able to basically buy retirement or things could get really nasty.
Or worse off, and Sid kind of refers to this. Eventually, you're not going to be able to do this anymore, and you're going to have to pick a side.
Yeah.
And that was the more scary reality of it, that this is not going to be something they can do forever.
Yeah.
And so they're probably going to have to call up Rex and say, hey, we're ready to join the rebellion and whatever
hmm
that means. So
hmm
we'll see where that ends up taking them.
Yeah.
So first 2 episodes were really good. There were a couple things that one thing I didn't love.
The
Excuse
crabs.
me. Oh, the crab's cool. I'm fine with crabs. If they were spiders, then our good friend Chris probably wouldn't have been able to
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
The crabs were fine. They were cool. And Omega was just a legit like soldier by this point,
Yeah.
like she looked like she knew what she was doing, could carry her own and stuff. But what I kind of thought about and had to noodle on a bit was the way that Count Dooku was portrayed as being a pillager. And I've talked about this in a few places, like and I think Dan even talked about this on
What
the
kinds of
channel.
places? Like in
Um
elevators with strangers?
Wait, what?
You said you've talked about this in a few places.
Oh, like on the channel.
Oh, okay.
Bro Axiom.
I thought you meant just like in line at the deli.
No, yeah. I'll just randomly be like, "Hey, did you watch that Bad Batch? What do you think of the way that Count Dooku was portrayed?" No.
I'm just trying to get some cheese, man. Leave me alone.
I just want a hoagie. Want my Philly cheesesteak.
Yes.
That's right. Anyway, no, the way that he was portrayed as being a pillager was a bit out of character for me. Because I guess I just thought of him as this political idealist, like the term that is used. That's the way I see of him. Not somebody that goes around to planets and steals all their gold and all their credits and hoards them all.
Yeah, and to me, it's like, to what end?
Right.
For what?
Yeah, like he didn't do anything with them.
Right. It just piled up.
Yeah, he kind of calls
like
it like
smog.
the riches of war. Yeah, like smog. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Just heaps and heaps of treasure, but just kind of like coveting it and protecting it. And
yeah.
Okay.
But the way I reconciled it in my mind was that maybe that was part of like Palpatine's bidding, and he just did what his master told him to do.
Definitely could have been that.
And so that's how I reconciled it.
Okay.
It didn't feel as much a character. Not that it's like it ruins anything for me. It was just odd, and then I had to kind of figure out how it worked, and that's what I came to. So,
okay.
Then we got to the third episode, which was the solitary clone, and a lot of people were like, "Oh man, I wish we were able to get Crosshair back." Well, we got him in this one, and that was a fantastic episode. Another surprise was Commander Cody coming back, which is the
I haven't seen it yet.
Yes, I know. I'm spoiling for you. Spoiler alert for everybody else, and you know what? Spoiler alert for you too, I guess.
Real-time spoilers.
Yeah, but no, I mean it's not too big. But just like Commander Cody is in it.
Yeah.
And they address this idea of clones going AWOL, which is kind of new. We kind of just thought that because the inhibitor trip, they couldn't make these kind of decisions for themselves. So it turns out they can still, and some are choosing to leave, which is ironic and weird. So it plants that seed, and it gives us a really cool episode. Anyway, I won't spoil anything else for you.
Go
watch it.
I will. What is this run, by the way? Is it 15 episodes?
16, I think.
16.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're going to have this for a few months.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. One a week. It's going to be great.
Wow.
Okay. Anyway, that's the big piece of news. What else?
Oh, well, we just found one right before we turned the mics on.
Yeah, we did.
Which is a happy piece of news, which is that 90-year-old John Williams.
I know the guy.
Personally?
No.
90-year-old John Williams is going to
just ignore me and move on.
Continue writing scores for movies.
Excuse me.
During the pandemic, he announced his retirement.
Yep, I remember that.
And
sad.
Very sad, bittersweet, because he's given us a lot, but at the same time, that's what he wants to do. The man is 90. He should be able to enjoy his retirement.
Most people retire 30 years prior to that, you know?
He I think, loves what he's done and what he will continue to do, because he's not going to be retiring.
The fact that he has that mental acuity still to write music.
Oh, yeah.
Not just like, occasionally write a book. And I'm not saying like writing a book is easy compared to writing music, but I definitely put writing music as like a very, very technical skill set.
Yeah.
And to be able to carry that all the way through to this age, like that's impressive, right?
And all consuming. Like, you must have to be like totally in it and really focused on it. You can't write music while you're like folding the laundry necessarily.
Right.
You got to be really
maybe he could. He's probably coming up with the ditty every time he does it.
Perhaps. But do you remember during the pandemic, there was that article about him? They did a piece in the New York Times where they interviewed him, and they said, how have you been spending the lockdown time or whatever? And he said he's been writing music every day and he loves it. But he wants to retire from doing scores because he says it takes like 6 months to do a score for a movie. And he said, I'm 90. That's a lot of time when you're 90.
Yeah.
But apparently what happened was Steven Spielberg, with whom I looked it up, he's done 29 movies with Steven Spielberg alone. And Spielberg came to him and said, I'm going to keep making movies. Let's keep working together. And apparently John Williams just loves collaborating with Spielberg and said, I can't say no.
You don't say no to Spielberg is my guess.
Yeah. So I think this summer, the what's probably going to be the final Indiana Jones movie comes out.
Right.
Some of us expected that to be the final score, but who knows? This means that maybe John Williams will do
Taika Waititi's movie.
a Star Wars movie.
Just throwing it out there.
Wouldn't that be? That would be wild.
I wonder how he would adapt his movie to do a score. It'd be weird. It'd just be weird.
Could be fantastic.
You'd have to throw some Guns N' Roses references in there or something like that.
Maybe. I don't know. It could be wild.
Whatever genre that Taika's picking out today.
Yeah.
That's cool. What a blessing for, whatever movie he ends up doing.
Yeah.
Star Wars would be awesome.
Would be awesome, but I'm just glad that somebody that creative feels like they've got a little bit more juice left and they want to share it with the world.
Yes. Same. One more piece of news, and then we can move on. Very small tidbit. And this will become irrelevant in just a couple of days. We'll talk about this in the next time we have news, apparently. Mandalorian Season 3 trailer will be coming out on Monday. What is that day? Today's the 13th, so what is that, 16th?
16th.
During Monday Night Football halftime.
Oh.
So, and it's a playoff game. So, going to have a lot of viewers. And, this is Disney on ESPN trying to maximize all of its channels for marketing and going to throw the Mandalorian Season 3 trailer out there.
Okay.
That's the, and it's not apparently a rumor. It's like in their media package is where it was confirmed.
Okay. So that's confirmed. That's legit.
It seems legit. Let's all just make sure it is. But
all right.
Something to look forward to if you want to know. And this is not just like the last one we got was the teaser trailer. This is like the one where they give you a bit more about the plot, right?
Ooh,
this is like the theatrical trailer, right?
Okay.
So we should be getting a lot in this one.
I'm pumped.
So get excited.
I'm wondering, so the Super Bowl's not that far away.
Like what, 4 weeks?
Like, I think less. I think, isn't it 2 weeks-ish?
I don't know. I don't follow enough. But usually they have a bye week in there. Like this is like the bye week.
So it would be like a month, maybe.
I'm going to guess it's
right.
Yeah, because it's usually in February, beginning, middle.
Okay. Yeah, so. I wonder if we'll get anything Star Wars-y then. What else is supposed to come out this year?
Ahsoka?
I don't know if they do a Super Bowl ad for that.
Yeah, and if it's ready. I mean, it's probably close.
I
don't know. Let's not hold our breaths, but
okay. Is that it for the news?
That's it for the news.
Okay.
Do you want to go to our next segment?
Yeah.
That's you.
That's me.
That's you. 64.
More to the story.
Dun 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 dun.
This week.
That was my ditty.
I like it.
Not John Williams like.
This week. So last time we talked about death. Thank you to everybody who checked in to make sure that we're okay.
From one taboo Did anyone check in on you? Because nobody checked in on me.
No, I was just saying that to make it seem like we have friends. Last time we talked about death.
From one taboo topic to the next.
This time we're talking about religion.
Yes,
in Star Wars.
Everyone is comfortable talking about that. It's just amazing how we pick these topics sometimes, right?
Yeah. What are we talking about next time?
Stormtroopers.
Okay. See, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like that's what you're not going to start any fights at Thanksgiving next year talking about. I listened to the Star Bros episode about stormtroopers. It's going to be fine.
Did they talk about how they can't shoot? Yes. That offends me. As a former stormtrooper myself. No, we're going to talk about religion, but more specifically, the religions in Star Wars.
Oh,
and maybe we should just say like religious observances. And how they do connect to religions of our own planet called Earth.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so where do you want to start with this one? You are the one that have been coming up with some of our topics and titles, we should say. Like Jan here, guys, is taking on the dad jokes. It's impressive.
It's kind of you to say.
Is it?
What's this one called?
I find your lack of faith podcast worthy.
Brilliant. That was a collaboration, though.
It was, but you reminded me of the line.
Yeah. Where do we start? Good question. So when we were we were texting all morning about this.
Yeah, I woke up to text from you at like 6:30. You were going.
I was excited.
Yeah. This must have been like shower time thoughts that came out. Was that accurate?
I've just been kind of thinking about this on and off.
You shower, right?
Yes. I think. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it for a couple of days, and I think there's a few different angles that we can kind of go at it from. But we were talking about how there are different belief systems.
Yep.
In Star Wars, one of the big ones that are sort of like two ends of a spectrum are the Jedi and the Sith.
Yeah.
And I don't think people necessarily think of those belief systems as being religious.
But they are.
They are.
They have observances, they have customs, they have, what's some of the,
They have
words?
faith.
They have faith, exactly, and they believe in something,
Yes.
in a higher power, and this higher power is the Force,
Yeah.
right? And the way they kinda talk about it is as if it's something that, is greater than themselves, and it's something that they can tap into. They've
Mhm.
learned how to tap into, but that is still mysterious. That it has a will too, right? Which is very much like, I mean, it's very much like a deity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The way that it's made to sound. So it isn't kind of given that same uh that same regard, I would say.
Mhm.
But the fact that they're trying to learn what the will of the Force is and follow it,
Mhm.
is very indicative of how a lot of people today follow a deity.
I think that's spot on. So we talked a little bit about belief systems, and there are the closer you look at Star Wars, the more belief systems there are. The Gungans have a faith. The
Interesting.
Ewoks have religious type of observances. There are different practices that are rooted in faith that are adopted across the galaxy. We were texting about Life Day today, for example. Like,
Yeah.
that's a Wookiee religious ceremony,
Yeah.
Life Day. It's a religious holiday, but it is adopted by different beings all across the galaxy. So there's a few different kind of things that started to make us think, wow, there's really something here. But I thought maybe we could start by talking about the intersection between our world and a galaxy far, far away.
Got a lot of notes on that.
Well, I'm going to take it to a fun place first, which
Okay.
is the religion of Jediism.
Okay.
S-
Am I wait, was I allowed to is that the kind of like what kind of fun are we talking about?
we're going to talk a
I'm
little bit
kidding.
about the story of Jediism.
Yeah.
And a lot of it seems to go back to in 2001, there was a global email campaign to get people to put Jediism as their faith when asked by their government in a census.
What government was this?
They were trying to do it globally.
Globally. Okay.
So there are countries all over the world do some version of a census. Some do it 5 years, some do it 10 years. Like in the United States, we do it once every 10. But there was this push to say, hey, put the
Say that your faith is Jediism.
yes,
That you believe in being a Jedi.
yes.
Okay.
It seems like a lot of stuff kind of stems back to that point, and that's where I think it came into the consciousness of a lot of people of like, oh, I feel like I've never necessarily fit anywhere,
Mhm.
and maybe this is a fun thing. It was dismissed largely like as people are just jokesters, kind of like how in 2016, I think in the U.S., Harambe got like 30,000 votes for president because here in the U.S. you can write
You can
in.
write in on the ballot. Yeah.
So Harambe, the
was
rest in peace.
was
er,
that more than Bart Simpson?
I don't know.
Because usually that one gets that's one that gets a bunch of votes every year.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the UK in 2001,
Okay.
and something special happens then.
Okay.
A guy named Daniel Jones, and everything I read refers to Daniel Jones and his brother Barney.
Okay. I'm guessing he really has a brother named Barney then.
Yeah, and I'm
Right?
sure I'm
Just
sure I'm sure they're lovely guys, but it's just Barney seems like such a great sidekick name.
I mean, it's just a lot has happened to that name ever since a purple dinosaur bore that name,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That's what happened.
But Daniel Jones and his brother Barney, who I think are Welsh, are in the UK, and Daniel gets this idea with his brother. Why don't we form a Church of Jediism? Get the tax breaks, whatever else goes with it. He's 23 at the time.
Okay.
He's a young man.
Which makes him probably be 44 now.
That your math checks out.
Okay.
He's 23 at the time. So when you're 23, you do fun stuff and sometimes you do silly stuff. And I thought that's what it was until I read in 2009, Daniel was ejected from a grocery store for refusing to take his hood down.
Oh gosh, his Jedi robes.
Yes.
Okay.
He, I think, tried to file a lawsuit against the grocery store chain because
Religious practices.
it was a religious
Yeah.
practice.
Okay.
The general manager of that particular grocery store said, he's not banned, Jedi are not banned. He threw it back at him and said, if Obi-Wan, if Yoda, if another Jedi came in here today, I believe that they would take their hood down because that's our policy. And you don't really see those guys with their hoods up.
No, you don't.
And he
Very
said,
rarely.
you know who has their hood up?
Only when they're exiting ships.
Yes. Yeah, it's drafty or whatever.
Yeah.
But the store manager said Palpatine has his hood up.
Palpatine's not a Jedi.
Right. And so I think he was sort of like, if you were a real Jedi, Daniel Jones and Barney,
oh my gosh,
you would have taken your hood down.
And Barney, both of them were doing this?
It was just Daniel.
That's funny.
But that happened 8 years later.
Okay.
So he stuck with it. He was a believer.
There was a YouTube video of him on like Good Morning. No, it wasn't Good Morning America. It was maybe the British version of that show. And the guy was basically ripping into him. The
host.
The host, yeah.
Okay.
Was like, okay, but like, listen, a lot of religions are based off of a belief of a higher power.
Mm-hmm.
Your belief is in something that was made by a man who was writing a movie. Like, it's not based on something that's real. It's based off pop culture.
Yeah, it's more of a practice. Like I was looking at, like,
it's more of a way of life.
Yes, they try to follow the Jedi code.
They're very charitable.
Yeah, there's nothing bad in there. It's just sort of a way of acting, a way of being.
And I think that's where the host also went. It was like, yeah, but there's also a lot, like, those are principles that are also taught in a lot of other faiths. Like, so why found it specifically on Jediism, on being a Jedi and things like that? So all valid points on both sides.
Sure. Yeah. One other fun fact about real world Jediism. In 2005, in the United States, the Temple of the Jedi Order got its IRS tax exemption.
No way.
Yes. And you know where it started? This surprised me a little bit.
Don't say Philadelphia.
No.
Where?
Texas.
Really? That's not too surprising. Actually, you know what? Maybe it is, because it's just would they break off from like Christianity? Oh, very surprising.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So those are some real world intersections with our faith, but with the faiths of the galaxy.
Well, you mentioned like some commonalities between the Jedi and other faiths. I wrote down a whole list of some common threads.
Okay.
And it spans a lot of different religions. There's a lot of people who are Christians, me being one, who, gosh, I've sat in church and I've heard a lot of people use examples from Star Wars as like a tongue-in-cheek joke, just to like throw out some kind of like "May the Force be with you" reference, and everyone go, ha ha ha, yeah, that's funny. But there's enough commonalities to at least some of the principles taught, where people in church, ours and other faiths, kind of pull from them, which is, I find, really cool and refreshing when you can say, like, here's something from the world that teaches something good, and we're gonna teach it here too, and draw parallels between them.
Cool.
But either way, I thought of all the parallels, and the most obvious one, when people usually talk about like the will of the Force, like in Christianity, there's the Holy Ghost, which you listen to and try to understand its will. It's kind of the way to to commune with God. And so a lot of people hear that and the Force, and they're like, hey, there's some parallels there, right? Another one I thought was interesting was the Jedi Council. Do you know how many people are on the Jedi Council?
I don't.
12. Does that number sound familiar?
It does.
12 apostles, right? So like a lot of Christians see that kind of stuff. They're like, hey, George Lucas is injecting Christianity. Is he doing kind of like the Tolkien thing where, it's very Christian based? He's teaching Christianity through fantasy, right? But ironically, a lot of people look at it and say, actually, there's more commonalities with Buddhism.
There's definitely a lot of that in there.
A lot, and I looked up what a few of them are. One of them is living a life devoid of attachment,
Mhm.
which is very, very similar to kind of like the beliefs of Buddhism, to not be attached to anything, um, even like familial attachments, which the Jedi show, and there's a lot of benefit from that. And then we've seen, obviously, in the case of Anakin, some harm that can come from
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Um, but
The
some
the whole thing of attachment leading to suffering is like a core tenet of
it,
Buddhism.
it is exactly, and that whole line of leads to suffering and hate and all, like,
Yeah.
I'm going backwards, I guess, from Yoda's quote. It is. It's like a key tenet to Buddhism.
Yeah.
But even like meditation and mindfulness as a practice, also very key uh, aspect of Buddhism. Um, I mean, there's a ton more. I even read one about Tibetan Buddhists Buddhist lamas who have to be selected at very young ages. Again, just like the
Yeah.
Jedi,
Yeah.
and have to pass certain tests. Oops, have to pass certain tests to be admitted
Mhm.
in as a llama there. And more interestingly enough, they one of the ideas was that they would have to identify possessions of previous llamas.
Oh, to show that they're the reincarnation?
To kind of show just their mindfulness, I guess.
Oh, okay.
It's but think of it like the test that Anakin gives or
Yeah.
gets of like identifying the speeder, like using that thing, like it's very similar,
Mm.
right? Like, can you connect to this higher energy
Yeah.
to do something that would be perceived as otherworldly almost?
One of the ones that stands out to me from the most recent trilogy is about how I think lamas or aspiring Tibetan monks do this thing where they'll kind of post up outside of the monastery, and through their patience and through their perseverance and through their commitment of just being willing to hang out and wait for an opportunity to be invited in, to be trained and to learn and so on,
Hmm.
eventually, like, you sit outside for days or whatever, and eventually they open up the door and they say, "Come on in." And
Wow.
that's kind of like Rey when she's on Ahch-To with Luke.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
kinda wearing him down, not aggressively, but just with her presence of, "I'm not gonna go away. I'm willing to make this commitment. Will you teach me?" Yeah,
yeah.
that's a parallel that kinda stands out to me.
That's a cool one. I hadn't heard about that one, but that makes sense. And I'm sure I am definitely no expert on Buddhism, other than the fact that growing up we had a Buddha in our garden. We
Cool.
actually did. It was like it was there when we moved in, and it was so heavy we just never like moved it
Oh,
away.
wow.
So it was just this big stone Buddha.
Yeah.
But anyway, other than that, like I'm definitely no you know theologist or whatever you want to call it on Buddhism, but it's just interesting to like research this and see all the parallels that George
Mhm.
Lucas kind of pulled from to say, all right, I like all these aspects, and I like that people, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, like you are inspired by something in Star Wars and see the connection to your own faith. It's kind of
Yes.
cool.
It's really cool.
I like that for myself actually.
It's really cool. Uh, I saw an interview with the Dalai Lama not too long ago, and somebody, I think, he always holds audiences with different people, and he answers questions in the midst of a lecture or whatever. And somebody said something to him about how I find a lot of the different tenets hard to live out. They make
Hmm.
sense to me, but following them faithfully is really difficult to do.
Well, don't we see that with the Jedi?
And so what the Dalai Lama said was, "Yeah, me too. It's hard to meditate. It's hard to be mindful.
Yeah,
It's hard to not have attachments."
yeah.
And
That's the point.
that's the point, is it's sort of this lifelong thing. And it's interesting with the Jedi how at different points you see them sort of struggle with that stuff.
Yeah.
Struggle with a little bit of attachment. Struggle with loving and caring about people or a person in particular.
Well, Anakin has this really interesting manipulative in some ways way of like taking this idea of like attachment being forbidden, but how compassion is encouraged. And if you think about what compassion is, it is um what's the word that he uses? It's love. Um but I'm missing the word, dang it. Um but he's trying to express like that it's okay to love,
Yeah.
and he's almost like walked his way back around to what he wants it to be. And it, to me, that's just a testament to how difficult it is to follow some of these things. You're almost like trying to justify behaviors that are against the practices and teachings,
Yeah.
but are carnal or whatever. They kind of follow your natural desires, and so you're trying to justify them being okay under the under those beliefs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's difficult. And Anakin's the story of like, and the poster child for that. Dooku is another one, right? There's so many Jedi that fall, and that were falling towards the end, and leaving Ahsoka being one of them. She didn't go to the dark side, but she was disenchanted by the beliefs. And so I think one of the things you want to talk about was conversion, right?
And maybe deconversion too.
And yeah, so go ahead and chat about that.
So
unconditional love, that was the word I was looking for.
Okay.
Anyway,
so sweet.
Too late.
No, it's okay. You got it in there. A quote that stood out to me as I was preparing for this episode comes from a writer who I like and just happened to be a pastor. He had this great quote that goes, "No soul is saved after 20 minutes." And what he was talking about was the process of writing sermons and going up there in the pulpit every week and telling a story and referencing scripture and so on. And basically saying, nobody's going to come into your house of worship or whatever it might be for the first time, and then 15, 20 minutes into it go, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm totally bought in. It all makes sense to me.
Amen.
And he said the other thing that stuck with me was that real conversions take a little bit of time. A real change of heart, a change of spirit, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about Anakin's conversion to becoming a Jedi. It's kind of a bumpy road.
Very.
And it's not a fast conversion. And same thing when he goes the other way. When he goes to the dark side, it doesn't happen overnight.
Some people might disagree. But yes, you're right.
It happens relatively quickly, yes. But there's an internal struggle.
I think when we got episode 3, we were just like that. You're dedicated to Palpatine now?
Yeah.
A minute ago, you're about to strike him down. But yeah.
I think some of that setup was there where it took a little bit of time. But
yeah, totally. Agreed.
So I wanted to ask you, are there other moments of like conversion, deconversion that you can think of? You just mentioned Ahsoka.
I think Ahsoka was the main one that came to mind for me, and I mentioned Dooku as well. But the one I like about Ahsoka, and this one is funny because you say like, yeah, it can't happen in 20 minutes. I do think that in some cases, deconversion, while it does take a long time,
maybe that's the fast one. Yeah.
I don't know if it's fast, but I think but like it can happen in a heartbeat, and it can happen in the heartbeat just the other way around. But like, I think, oh gosh, I just thought of a financial example. I'm not going to elaborate on that. Never mind. Like that would be bad. But no, I would like bore people to death with it. But the example I'm thinking of is like, sometimes it is just a moment that snaps you in or out of it. But the conversion really does take a long time.
So that's
moving
true.
averages is what I was thinking of, by the way.
Okay, we can get into that.
It's like you can have a real big pop, but after it takes a long time for the average to pull up to.
Yes,
that to me is conversion. One moment,
moving averages is conversion.
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
I
just didn't expect to go there tonight.
I know. Here we are, and talking about technical analysis. But that's the idea. It's the fact like you can have one big moment that brings you to a new level, but in reality, it takes a long time for you to change your behaviors, to like be fully committed to it.
Tony Robbins talks about that. He always says how your life can change in an instant, and everybody knows somebody whose life has changed in an instant.
Yeah,
and often it's the bad way. A terrible car accident or something.
Oh yeah,
changes everything about their life, how they see themselves, how they interact with the world,
what they're capable of doing, what they're capable of thinking.
Yes. And he says, and I've struggled with this one more, that it can happen on the good side too. Like you can decide to have a different perspective on things and just sort of see the world differently. Better,
but until you build those habits,
that's what I think.
it's not truly cemented yet. It's you pour the cement, it still has to dry.
Great way to put it.
Okay, that's a better analogy than moving averages.
I mean, the moving averages worked too.
But you got me. But Ahsoka's the other way around.
Uh-huh.
Ahsoka becomes disenchanted with the Jedi in an instant because she realizes that she's serving the Jedi, and in a minute when she's being framed for a crime that she didn't commit, it kind of makes everything unravel before her eyes, and she questions everything about the Jedi and everything they're doing. Like, she's never really believed in them being warriors and things like that. She just kind of bought into it really quickly, really young,
Yeah.
very young, and kind of realized a little bit too late that, oh, this doesn't really seem like what the Jedi are really about. Am I doing the right thing here? And that's where she leaves. But she doesn't go the path of like a Dooku and say, well, I'm gonna then become a Sith. I guess that's the better alternative. She just says, then I'm going to just frankly be a good person and use my abilities and my connection to the Force for good, the way that I know, not to
Mm-hmm.
fight. She puts off fighting as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like, she only uses the Force if she absolutely has to, as we saw in that example of Tales of the Jedi, right? But I do love that she like keeps the connection live, like, and she keeps her abilities really attuned
Yeah.
throughout that whole time.
So
Anyway,
she took something from it that served her well,
yeah,
and then decided not to have the label anymore, decided not to associate with the organization or the religion, and kind of went off in her own direction. And that happens in real life too.
I was just about to say that.
That
There's a lot of people who do that.
a lot of people that will take the traditions or the practices or some part that serves them really well, that makes them feel good or makes them a better person or whatever it might be,
Yep.
and then decides to leave the rest behind.
Yeah.
And in Ahsoka's case, it seems to really sting when somebody calls her a Jedi. And in some of those people in real life, in some of their cases, if they say you are a blank, like they take that personally too.
Mm-hmm.
And in that particular case, I think that's a great example of a kind of a deconversion. But it seems like I think there's been a couple in the High Republic where we're getting like sort of these rogue or gray Jedi,
Yeah.
or these Jedi-like beings who aren't part of the order or anything like that. And I just think that's always been a really interesting place to explore. And I like characters like that. So I'd love to get some more of those, whether it be in the High Republic or wherever else. But
Yeah.
something else I wanted to talk about was, as I was thinking about preparing for this episode, I kept thinking of the line from The Force Awakens with Harrison Ford when he's talking to the other characters,
The mumbo jumbo line.
where he says it's true, all of it.
Yeah, the one right before that.
Right
Yeah, it
before
was
that,
mumbo
yeah.
jumbo. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is interesting about religion in our world and in the galaxy of Star Wars is how a lot of things are, I don't want to say reduced, I'll put reduced in air quotes, to kind of like mythology or storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of a break between the people who are like, no, this is true. And then the other people who say, no, it's a great story, but it's such a great story that we want to hang on to it and learn from it and have it continue to inspire hope for us and help us kind of point in the right direction of what we should be doing in life, but it's not real.
Yeah.
And how there's that circle always turning of people who are like, I believe it completely, and I put it into practice in my life. And then you get to the other side and it's like, well, I don't believe it, but I'll take what I need and leave the rest.
Yeah.
And it's a revelation moment for Finn and Rey and BB-8 on the Millennium Falcon, hearing it is true.
Yeah.
It's not just some story that kids tell one another across the galaxy.
Well, he's been surrounded by it. Remember the line from New Hope, and I was trying to look it up, where he says something about hokey religions and
Yeah.
yeah, and nothing, he ties it into Blaster. Gosh, I could just, the words are not coming tonight.
That's okay.
But the
do you want to do a mime podcast?
yeah, that would be great. Yeah, we're on video now, so people would get that.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to like say the exact verbatim quote, but you know which one I'm talking about.
There
He
there
goes
used to
from
be.
that to it's true, all of it, and it takes a while. Back to
Hmm.
the point about like how long conversion takes, right?
Yeah. Uh,
Sorry,
uh,
interrupted you.
no, it's okay. I was going to say that there was a Twitter account that I used to love where it was just a mime, and like a couple of times a day he would tweet just an ellipsis, just tweet dot dot dot.
Somebody had alert set up for that,
Yes.
right?
And it would get like thousands of likes.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. And it's probably from all the people with alerts.
Probably.
Um, excuse me. But while we're talking about Han Solo, like the fact I like that he eventually gets there, and that's like a good ending for conversion. Um, think of like all the events that took place. Like he had to witness blowing up the Death Star and how it was done,
Oh
and
my
how the
gosh, yeah.
Force has influenced Luke, and then he fell in love with Leia, and when she tried to started training as a Jedi, and then they had Ben who learned to be a Jedi. Like he was surrounded by it for years
Hmm.
to eventually get to that point where he's like, I used to think it was mumbo jumbo, but it's actually true. Um, but either way, they got me thinking about atheists
Hmm.
in Star Wars. Do you think there's atheists in Star Wars?
Um,
Like Han Solo was.
I don't know. I don't know if Han Solo was an atheist.
And think about atheists as maybe in this case, it's like towards the Force
Oh,
a
okay.
little bit more. It's like the same version of like an atheist here in our
Okay. Because I think of atheism as an active non-believer of
yeah, a
that
denier or something.
a
Yeah.
denier that's not true. So okay, I think I can see that. I can see Han Solo being a Force atheist.
Yeah, because he says hokey religions. Like he's at least disenchanted with them
Yeah,
at a minimum.
he's definitely skeptical, beyond skeptical, I guess. Um, so I think he is. I think you mentioned that some Imperial officers seem to be.
I think I said Tarkin, and I don't say Palpatine or Vader
No,
because they believe in the Force.
they are adherents to the Sith religion.
Yes, it's just the Sith religion and specifically the pursuit of power for yourself,
Hmm.
right? And instead of like following the higher power, like they believe in destiny. They
Hmm.
say that word a lot.
Hmm.
It's not as much like the will of the Force, but it is like what's your personal destiny,
And destiny is can only be divine, right?
right? Right.
There's no way that there can be kind of human made destiny.
We view it as evil because we know the Sith are the bad guys, but in their minds and their heart of hearts, they believe their destinies are, like you said, they're divine.
Yeah.
So to them, it's just as much true and right and pure and holy to them as much as to the Jedi, just for different intentions.
Yeah, and the true part I think is important. It it seems like both ends of the spectrum believe that they have the like capital T truth,
Yeah,
and neither of them I think can imagine that they're on the bad side, so
yeah,
to speak. But it is both of them I think see something divine and inspired in the Force,
yeah,
making it a religion.
yeah, yeah.
So yes, there are definitely characters in Star Wars who are uh, active Force atheists.
Yeah, there's the line that Tarkin says though to Vader about how he's all that remains of that ancient religion. And I think
Hmm.
that's the term that he uses.
Hmm.
So he recognizes the Jedi as a
Hmm.
religion, which is interesting. The word choice there, but it's also too that he doesn't really believe in the Force. He just believes in power,
Hmm.
right? Um, and like he's a major leader in the empire, which as we'll talk about in a second with Jedha, the empire is all about squashing religion. They view and specifically because I think they view the Force and the Jedi in the Force uh, being a threat to them.
A total threat, absolutely.
So any religion that uh, connects itself to the Force and tries to understand it or follow it or and tap into it to them is a threat.
Yeah.
So that's part of that's why I kind of use that definition of atheism. They're they're directly opposed to the Force.
On a broader level, yeah, but I think Tarkin respects Vader and respects what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's probably a believer in Vader's power as a tool or weapon for the Empire.
Yes.
Which is a
In
healthy amount
pursuit
of
of power.
respect, in pursuit of power. So it's in pursuit of the ends that he thinks are worthy. So I don't know if I would consider him a Force atheist as much as kind of he's self-serving to a point where he has enough belief in something if it's worthwhile, but maybe something that defines atheism is about self-practice too.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you personally adhere yourself to every
Yeah.
day? And he's definitely not somebody who I could see being like a Sith cultist. Like
No.
if you think about everybody who's kind of in the room at the end of Rise of Skywalker, all the people kind of in the stadium stands. I don't see Tarkin hanging out in there,
No, he's not.
but some people are
Yeah,
apparently.
but I mean, it also, you remember that line from it was Snoke when he was talking about General Hux,
Hmm.
who you might be able to put into that category of with Tarkin as well, where he talks about how he can be a sharp tool. Like
Yes.
somebody like that can be a tool in your hands, in Palpatine's hands,
Hmm.
to accomplish something very specific.
Hmm.
And I think like Palpatine sees the use of Tarkin
Hmm.
to accomplish his designs.
Yeah.
He knows his faults and his, you know, inability to trust or believe in the Force.
Hmm.
But he can look past that because the guy's going to go out and conquer worlds for him.
Yeah.
Right? So um he's useful. Is
Yeah.
all I'm saying. That lack of faith is useful.
Agreed.
Anyway, where do you want to go next? Atheism.
Atheism is a good one. Do you have more on atheism?
I thought of other ones. I was trying to think of who else, and I don't. I thought of the mods, but I don't think that they would categorize. Remember, the mods are from the Book of Boba Fett.
Hmm.
The ones that kind of they literally modify themselves to become more like droids.
Hmm.
I guess I thought of that. It's not really atheism because if you tie it to, it's nothing tied to the Force, but just the idea of kind of like Tarkin, like trying to become better than what you are. In Tarkin's case, he was using technology.
Hmm.
In the mod's case, they're using technology, droids,
Hmm.
to augment themselves.
Hmm.
So it's not atheism. So it doesn't really matter. But I guess I just thought of that being like really interesting as like a connection. Are you laughing at me?
I'm laughing at it's not atheism, so it doesn't really matter.
But like that's the other one I thought of as an example, but it's not a good one.
No, it's okay. I think there's something to that about. I think there's something in religion, whether it's in Star Wars or in real life, where it is about kind of transcending yourself and
Yeah.
becoming a better version.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just sort of a twist on that.
Yeah. It's just, again, it's not in pursuit of like the Force. That was the
It's
only
not in
thing.
the pursuit of the Force. It's a very kind of like worldly version of that.
Yeah.
That it's an interesting point that you've brought up. So thank you.
We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go next?
Great question. Where to next?
Didn't you want to talk about like interfaith or integrated religious practices?
A little bit. Yeah. Let's talk about Life Day.
Yeah, Life Day. Let's do that.
So we were texting about how it's interesting that Life Day has kind of gone all the way across the galaxy and something that's celebrated way beyond just the Wookiees on Kashyyyk. But it is a religious ceremony based in some type of religious faith that has broader meaning and is something that resonates with a lot of folks across the galaxy.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Christmas.
Yeah.
And Kevin Scott, bless his heart, when he signed my copy of the Life Day book that I have, wrote in there Space Christmas or Christmas in Space.
Yeah, yeah.
And that I think that's obvious to a lot of people that
Well, the book is red and green too.
the
So
book is red and green. It's kind of snowing and
yeah, yeah.
it looks very Christmassy.
And it's we like telling tales at Christmas time, like little
We love
stories,
telling stories.
and it's a book of stories, right?
It's a yeah, exactly.
So
It's something that you would tell around the fireplace eating Christmas cookies or something.
exactly.
And
Life Day cookies.
Life Day cookies.
Cookies with bookies. I just
Yes.
thought of that now.
I love that.
That's very good. No, it's
You,
terrible.
you
Anyway.
know what that would be really good in the Star Wars cookbook that I
I'm
imagined in
sure
my
it's
head
there. I'm
called
just let's go ahead.
called Tatooine cuisine.
Did you just come up with that?
No, been sitting on that one for years.
Really?
But it's
Waiting for
fine.
the right moment to say it.
It's fine. If you're listening or watching and you want to take that and you want to actually write that book, go for it.
I'm just imagining Chris right now in our chats. You know how he always does like the face palm
Yeah.
emoji
He's
or the face palm
palming.
reaction?
Yeah.
He's doing that to both of our comments right now, very hard.
So page 12 of Tatooine cuisine could be Wookiee cookies.
Wookiee cookies and Tatooine cuisine. Wow, we need to tweet that.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of parallels to Christmas, where Christmas is a practice, a holiday that has kind of permeated all different types of cultures, where maybe Christianity was not the predominant religion, households where maybe that's not the predominant faith or the faith practice of the family, but they brought in a Christmas tree and decorated it and give presents on December 25th and whatever. And then, we got further back into it when we were talking about how it's not even necessarily, all the symbology isn't even necessarily Christian, because it's pre-Christian.
Right. It's paganism.
It's pagan. Bringing a tree into your house is something that, folks have done for a long time before Christ.
Right.
So these different things evolve. The meaning about them might evolve even a little bit too, but I think the spirit is always the same.
Well, yeah, and like with Christmas specifically, like you said, it was kind of adopted, by Christians to to represent at least the time where we celebrate the birth of Christ. But at the same time, I've talked to people who are of different faiths that are not non-Christian faiths or just non-Christians in general, like not practicing or atheists, whatever they are.
So,
and guess what? They still observe Christmas.
Some people observe Giftmas.
Yeah.
Some people observe Krishnamas.
Krishnamas?
Yeah.
I've never heard that one actually.
Yeah. Or some people still call it Yule.
Yeah. Yeah. And
we still use terms like Yuletide cheer, things like that.
It's in a song.
mostly in songs and on Christmas cards, but we don't really say that in normal conversation except for right now.
But in this moment we're using it, and I know what you're saying. But it's I find it really fascinating that even this past one where I was talking to a few people, like, what do you usually do, since I know that you're not Christian? And they're like, we still give gifts. Mm-hmm. We still have a tree.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not like Christians claim that.
Yeah.
It said like, okay, we get all that now. Then they still give gifts, and it's because like what happens when they return to school and all their friends got gifts and they didn't or something, was the kind of the context of it. So think about that in terms of Life Day.
Yeah.
And I like the Lego special was really good for this. Like, okay, the holiday special was what it was and introduced that
concept. What it was is an understatement. Yeah.
But it's so cool, the thought that like Han Solo, like it's so important to Chewie that Han Solo is racing across the galaxy to get him back to his family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in the Lego special, where they're all coming together, everyone across the galaxy is coming to the Millennium Falcon just so they can celebrate it with some of their Wookiee friends.
Yeah.
Right. That's like, to me, it's special, right? The fact that they're willing to observe it and be part of the celebration too.
Yeah, and at its core, it's something that I think is meaningful to everybody across the galaxy. Like, I think at its core, Life Day is about bringing light into the darkness.
Yep.
Reintroducing light and hope and all that good stuff that goes with it, which is very Christmassy.
Yeah.
There's, Christmas kind of falls right around the winter solstice, where doesn't feel like, at least in our hemisphere, doesn't feel like it could be much darker or colder or gloomier, and the days are very short.
Our Australia friends are like, we're having a barbecue.
Yep, they're doing cannonballs into the pool and whatever. But no, we're here shivering and kind of hiding inside. Especially this year is brutally cold. This year,
yes, especially around the holidays.
But the part of the spirit of Christmas is hope renewed.
Yeah.
And that's something that translates and resonates and crosses all sorts of borders and everything else.
And faiths
And faiths and languages and you name it.
yeah.
And so like I think there's a really nice parallel there about how certain holidays or practices are kind of universally resonating with different beings all across the galaxy, just like some do on Earth.
Well, I mean, again, we're talking about Christmas here. Like and the holidays in general. People change around them. I mean, it gets busy and they get stressed and things like the stress of the holidays is real. And so
For
you get a
sure.
sense of that. All you have to do is go to the mall. Um, but or at least the one around here, some malls don't really get much traffic anymore.
Sadly, yeah.
But the one near us does.
Yeah.
Um,
People do a lot of giving.
yes.
People volunteer.
Yes.
People make it a point to talk to their kids about, some folks are less fortunate than us. And so we're going to go help them out.
Yes.
There's a lot of organized events. There's a lot of people opening up their wallets and giving their time and whatever else. And it's really nice. And then we all go back to being Scrooge in January, but that's a different story.
I mean, at least in the Northern Hemisphere where we have to endure terrible temperatures and things like that. Yeah. So it is interesting. Your point about like how that permeates cultures and things like that. It does that here too. Like people change the way they kind of handle themselves for just a little bit.
Yeah.
And it becomes a very joyous time.
And it's good for
life tastes like.
It's good for all of society.
Yeah.
It's really beneficial, I think, for the world.
Economically too. A lot of retail stores make all their money in Q4.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, tied to that.
Anyway,
one more thing I wanted to chat about.
Please.
Jedha. Jedha is fascinating to me because this to me was like when it came out in Rogue One, it was probably the most like overt expression or show of religion in Star Wars. Like we knew of the Jedi and we talked about them and the Sith and their practices and everything, but this really took it to a new level. Because I mean, it literally is called the Holy City. We have a holy city here too. It's called Jerusalem, or for Islam, it's Mecca. Right? There are parallels then to our universe there. But then they put all these different religions into that one place, which is very much like Christianity. You have all these different sects and divisions amongst Christianity that believe in a very similar thing, but then in a very different way, or just a slight nuance here and a slight nuance there, right? And that's kind of what Jedha is.
Yeah.
So there were a bunch of them that I found, like they have the Guardians of the Wills, and the Disciples of the Wills. Like even that is an example of like two almost the same, very similar name, right? And they have different beliefs. Like so, the Guardians of the Wills, they felt the Force and they wanted to follow its will, but they didn't use it and they didn't even believe in using it. So they were they're kind of separate from the Jedi in that one specific way. That the Jedi use it, right? But the Guardians of the Wills were very much against that. Understand the will of the Force and try to follow it, but leave it alone. And then the Disciples of the Wills were different in that sense. They listened to the Force, but they didn't act on it. Again, just a slight nuance from that even. Saying like, okay, we're going to listen to it, but we're not going to do anything. Whereas Guardians are like, no, we're going to do something about it, but we're not going to use it. The Jedi are like, you know what? We're going to do all three. So little nuances like that. There was a Church of the Force there, and Lor Santeca, who is in he's in a few things. He's in the comics, but he was first introduced in Force Awakens. Is a member of that church, the Church of the Force, and their belief is very specific. That
wait, where does that come up?
I can't remember where. I mean, I was reading it through some of my research.
Okay.
And I think I remember reading it in one of the Kylo Ren comic.
Okay, cool.
I think.
Okay, cool.
But so that was one place, but their belief is specific that is around the Jedi Order. That balance in the Force cannot be achieved unless the Jedi Order are there, which is why he's helping the Jedi, or helping the Resistance to find the Jedi again, to find Luke. Part of his religion and his faith.
Very cool. Okay.
And then there's a few. Do you remember those characters that were walking around? They were in like these big red robes in Rogue One,
Yeah.
and they had their head like it was like this box thing on their head
Do we
with a
know
very
who they
small
are?
slit. So they're from the Brotherhood of the Beatific Countenance. Was their names? This will sound very. This might sound very Buddhist parallels here. They took a vow of silence,
Oh.
and them wearing that vestment, which kind of it has a lot of parallels, I guess you could say, even to Islam, like with like their robes and everything, like covering up. But that was all about taking like a vow of silence, and
That
even stripping yourself of your name.
that's a thing in Zen Buddhism. The reason that they wear like black and brown robes is for visual silence.
Yeah, interesting.
So when you're all sort of meditating, there's not like flashy colors or people are wearing something sparkly or whatever. You're supposed to have visual silence as well as regular silence.
Well, the red is a little flashy,
A little bit,
but
but if
but
everybody's
still the same
wearing
concept.
it,
Yeah,
it sort of it doesn't really give your eye anywhere to go.
that's totally true. Yeah, so that was another one that I thought, just interesting. Again, just slight little nuances here and there. But and then one last thing I found interesting about it is that it was a place of pilgrimage.
Yes.
So people would go to Jeddah,
It's totally Jerusalem and Mecca put
right,
together.
to just kind of explore the ruins and explore the holy city and find kind of a higher purpose there. Um and it made me think of Mecca.
Hmm.
Like within Islam,
Mhm.
they commit to going to Mecca at least one time in their lifetime.
Yep.
And there's if you can't make it, financial obligation, like inability, like you can have a surrogate go for you.
Mhm.
But it's the idea that yeah, you accomplish this pilgrimage at least once in your life. And that's very similar to what they were trying to establish there with
Hmm.
Jeddah and the pilgrims. And Jin and Cassian were disguising themselves as pilgrims when they're going there. So anyway, all very similar parallels to Jerusalem, Mecca, to uh, kind of the idea of all these like these faiths that have a lot of similarities yet little nuances and differences, all located in one area.
Hmm.
So, um, found that was really really interesting stuff. I thought I'd share.
Couple thoughts.
Please.
Something that I never made the connection with before, but I took a class in college that was like a survey course on Islam,
Okay.
which was ended up being one of my favorite classes. The professor was amazing. Um, but there is something called a jinn, which is like a troublesome, like a little troublemaking type of elf that lives out in the desert in the Muslim world.
Okay.
And so like sometimes stuff goes wrong around the house and people in the Muslim world apparently will say, well, the washing machine has jinns in it or whatever.
Okay.
And I wonder if that was like a purposeful connection. But
Jin Urso, you mean?
yeah,
Interesting.
but a more like Englishified or anglicized word for jinn is genie. So
Oh,
same thing.
okay.
So
Yeah, yeah.
some genies will be wish granters, but they've got magical powers and they mostly cause trouble.
Like Aladdin?
Like yeah, like the genie in Aladdin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Disneyfied a bit.
Disneyfied, totally. But going back to your conversation about like the different angles on the same kind of concepts or the different faiths in Jeddah, which I think they're going to keep exploring in the High Republic stuff, by the way, and I love it. I think
They
it's
aren't they? Like in the
yeah,
comics?
yeah.
Yeah.
In third time I think we're mentioning him tonight, but in the Cavan Scott run of
Who?
Cavan
That's
Scott,
4.
nice.
I don't know.
Of the Marvel series of the High Republic, Phase 2, issue 4 is out now. That they're really kind of digging into what's the background of Jeddah, who's there, how are these different groups kind of bumping into each other, and so on. And I think it's fascinating. But going back to what you were saying about Jerusalem and Mecca, I I didn't realize, I think until I was in college, that Islam, Judaism, Christianity all have the same God.
Yeah.
It's all the God of Abraham.
Yeah.
It all kind of points back to that one place.
Yeah.
And people think of them as being so different
No.
sometimes, but they all have the same core foundation,
Yep.
totally different angles on things, debates, whatever, but it's the ultimately like a lot of the force sensitive and force aware folks on Jedha, it's a very similar thing where it's like we're kind of all gathering around the same concept,
Yeah.
but looking at it from slightly different angles.
Yeah. And that just maybe this is a good note to end on, right? It kind of shows you at the end of the day just how, it's totally fine to have those different beliefs and different systems and different ways of kind of practicing your what you believe to. I mean, a lot of religion exists for the purpose of well, I say two purposes. One, to to be the best you can be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And kind of figure out what that is. We kind of define that a little differently, but like to your point earlier, it all kind of comes back to these same universal principles
Yeah.
of hope and charity and
Yeah.
being kind and stuff like all that stuff. But it's the idea of like continual self improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is pursuit of truth, right? What is that capital T truth,
Yeah.
and trying to understand it. And um I think even people who are not religious are in pursuit of a lot of those. All right.
Absolutely.
It's and a lot of them may go through science to try to find that, which by the way is just another a way to find truth.
Yeah.
um so those are like the two main reasons for it. And even in Star Wars, like um all the religions kind of tie back to that same concept. It's just around the force,
Yeah.
right? And again, we just talked about with Jedha, how much they have in common. They may have little differences, but let's celebrate the commonalities between them.
Totally.
Let's find what brings us closer together than makes us drift further apart. I'll stop with that.
I love it. I
Anyway.
felt that in my heart.
You felt that?
Yeah.
Oh, you have a heart.
Good. I do. And maybe that's a good note to end on.
Well, I know you wanted to do some names too, right?
Oh, yeah. But I wanted to talk about, because sometimes, what was the example you gave? Sometimes there are names in Star Wars that like a little bit lazy, typically to honor somebody, a real
Coleman Trebor.
Who's Coleman Trebor?
He's in Attack of the Clones, I believe.
Uh-huh.
He's one of those background Jedi characters in the Coliseum, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's Coleman Trebor.
Okay. What?
Robert backwards is Trebor. So, yeah, I just remember seeing that in the Star Wars app on a card, and I was like, that's just Robert. And so I go and search who's Robert Coleman. And sure enough, he was attached to Star Wars. I'm forgetting what he did specifically. He was like,
I love
maybe
it.
in the visual design, like something.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I'm thinking of. I love stuff like that.
Or the KT droid.
The KT droid, yeah, that one's very sweet. I like that one. But
I like that one.
Trebor is just come on. So I was wondering, like, well, what would they do with me if I was gonna become some background character in a movie or something?
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, what if they took my Star Bros name, Jan Solo? They would probably just change it to San Yolo.
San Yolo,
which I thought,
oh, that's perfect.
Which I thought sounded like a Southern California town.
Jan only lives once. Southern California.
Yeah, we just got a beach house in San Yolo.
It's the only one on the block.
It's the only one. But I thought like it's like a Southern California town for like Gen Z kids. San Yolo.
Oh.
So that's what came to my mind today.
I like that.
Yeah.
I thought because your other initial is K, and I thought of TK, like Stormtrooper. I figured you would just be JK.
I could be like JK.
A different a different kind of Stormtrooper, maybe a Scout Trooper type.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
JK, add whatever numbers are important to you.
Yeah.
What's your birthday? 320 or
322.
322?
Yeah.
JK 322.
That's a good one.
There you go.
The other one that came to mind is not like a lazy one, but apparently J.J. Abrams is a big Beastie Boys fan. Have you heard this
yes,
one?
I knew that. Yeah,
and one of the characters who pops up in the sequel trilogy, that the Beastie Boys had like a late '90s, early 2000s album called Hello Nasty, and his name is Elo Asti. He just cut off. Cut off the first letter of each word.
Yes, I remember that one.
So
So
yeah. So
creative.
what would your lazy Star Wars name be?
I'll just go with the Coleman Trebor and say I'm Nimage Neb.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
I don't. Yeah, whatever you want to put after that. Before that is like the
Yeah,
full name, or just call me Nimage Neb, and I'm a Gungan.
I love it. So on behalf of Nimage Neb and Saniolo, thank you for coming to the Church of Star Bros today.
Oh, jeez.
We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you making it this far. If you've listened to the whole thing or if you've watched the whole thing, what
Thanks,
a treat.
Susan.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
But we genuinely do appreciate you watching, you listening, you commenting, you interacting with us. We do this just for fun. The more people who interact and leave reviews and all that great stuff just makes it even more fun for us, and hopefully just makes for good content for you. But if you'd like to get in contact with us, where can people find us?
They can find us at the Star Bros Podcast at gmail.com. If you want to email us, you can just find us on Twitter at Star Bros Podcast.
Also Hive.
Yes.
At Star Bros Podcast.
And TikTok?
At Star Bros Podcast.
Are you doing anything there? I get emails every once in a while.
I just repost.
Okay. You're our social media guru.
I don't know how to do the Tic Tac though.
The Tic Tac. You might not be able to do it for much longer if I hear if where I hear TikTok goes anywhere.
Yes, could be, but that's we won't speculate.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's it, right? And Facebook.
And wherever you listen to podcasts.
And that. Yes.
And the Baraxium YouTube channel.
That you got it right out of my mouth. You said thank yous. You said where they can find us. We already said it. Next time we'll be talking about stormtroopers. So that helmet over there, maybe I'll put it on for the actual event. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
And weird and nerdy and cool.
It's a great combo.
Yeah.
All those things.
So we'll talk about that next time.
Yep.
Should be fun. Anything else we should leave our listeners?
I think there's one more thing.
One more thing.
Yeah.
It is. Yes. Your turn.
It feels weird doing it at your place.
It does feel weird, right? We got to get back on track with that.
It's a wrap.